I don't know why it's doing that. I got this old fender Paul gave me, try to slice a section out and see what I can do about making that C-pillar. This will just be a practice kind of run. Yeah, like that. Kind of hard to see, I guess, but alright. See what we can do with that. Make a beater bag for that part I gotta make. And I got this, so I got a slice of leather, and I got this buckshot right here. I'm gonna see if I can just whip something up quick. So the idea here is to put this shot inside there without having this explode and blast bead all over the shop. I think it's good. 3 hopefully. Here comes the fun part. Yeah, it turns out that's not so easy to do when there's 40 pounds of lead in it. Trying to convince myself that I would be able to do this on my test piece here, and I'm convincing myself that I probably can't do this. This is a tricky thing here. I'm still playing with my practice piece here. This is supposed to curve this way. So every time I get it there and I make another fold here, this wants to get shrunk, but this is such a big piece here, you know, meaning depth-wise, like shrinking out here, it doesn't really seem to do much. So I'm just gonna see if I can stretch here. It is kind of starting to get there. It's just the shape is really, really hard. It's a good practice, but my saying always was if you beat on a piece of metal long enough, it'll eventually turn into the shape you need. And I think I found the limit of that statement. If you beat on it past a certain point, it's going to just thin out to the point where it's not usable anymore, and that's what's happened here. I think the other thing, the other learning from this is that that's pretty much straight at this point. It had a radius when I started. That's because there's so much material in here that needed to be shrunk. To form this, it's pulling material from in here, and that is pulling this straight. So if I were to do it this way, what I would have to do is either exaggerate this radius, or I would have to just make this a separate piece so I can get up in here and shrink it. I would have to probably make this in a few separate pieces. And this one being right here, like this is problematic in here because there's so much stretching that needs to go on. I think what you would do is just probably relieve it somewhere in here and then weld in a strip that wraps the corner, but I think that's the only way it works. You know, you could almost see it working if I just had to do this part, right? This is all just beat out on the sandbag, and I use that planishing hammer. I really don't have the equipment to do this. I think you would need a nice bead roller. You need several different mandrels for it. It's going to be a combination of different mandrels and different adjustments that you make to it that would actually help give you that shape, and then you probably beat the rest of it by hand. I mean, other than learning a couple things, like that is a complete failure. I could envision using that beater bag for, you know, simpler things. When you're going with it and you start making your shape, you've got that kind of a situation going on where it's like a memory foam kind of a deal with all of the shot that's in there. So as it starts to form, it has this kind of like you're pushing all that bead aside and you're kind of making like the pillow turns into like a mold based on where you're striking it. I beat on this really hard, and you know, there's no signs of it giving up the ghost. So I think that's a real handy addition right there. I highly recommend that one. This is Byron's other car, which I hope to do something with at some point. This is the piece we need right here. I'm gonna see if I can make a mold of it. Oh, this feels so wrong. Gotta break in a nice new knife for this one. I'm gonna kind of let this nearly set and then just run over there and smush it on as quick as possible. That's not good. I have no idea what I'm doing, by the way. I don't know. Let me leave it there and see what it does. That's it. It's gonna work or it's not. I'm just going to take this thing off here, and I realized that unscrews. Where'd you use that? Like a broom thread, right? Broom handle thread. So like, I guess you put it on a pole and you can scrape something far away. I don't know. I grabbed onto it. I gave it like probably 10 yanks in different directions, and to my surprise, like it popped right out. So I was blown away that this came out the way it did. You know, I greased it up, so the grease did help it release. Went to the metal supermarket and I got a sheet of 20 gauge, and I bought this little honey down here. Look at that. Yeah. Do something with it. I'm gonna have to make an inverse of this, and I think the idea is that I'd like to make some kind of a buck form, some type of a form out of this, out of concrete, out of, I don't know. But what I do know is that that needs to get cleaned up, and I'm just honestly figuring this out as I go. There isn't much of a plan. In my head, I can kind of see this getting translated into some other medium that I can bang into. See what happens if you mix the stuff too hot. Plaster, you work it as it dries. You want to kind of wet plaster as you go. And you buff it. Alright, here's our piece, cleaned up. I'm going to put this strip on there to just make up some thickness for a panel that was still on. Then I'm going to take and tape that in there like that. And I'm going to fill it from the top with plaster. Alright fellas, this is going to be interesting to see if this one comes out. So I got that filled up with plaster, coated it with some grease first, and then I filled it up with plaster. I'll bring it inside tonight and I will put it on the heat register, and then tomorrow hopefully I can crack it apart, and then on to the next step, making another version of this with the new piece, and I don't know, concrete or something, I don't know yet. Alright, made it through another hurdle. This did release. I can actually make a real version of this that I can hammer into out of what, I don't know. I want to bind here, so I want to clamp the metal down there. So if this was, you know, if you could imagine this kind of having a square base, I think I'd want through bolts here, top sandwich plate following this here. Obviously it's going to have to be something that bends. Like some 1/4 inch laminate, Luan type stuff. It rolls, it stretches, it folds, and then it does one more final fold here where it's going to attach around the radius of the wheel well. I guess we take it over to the car and see how it matches up. You know, at a glance, I'd have to say that the radius seems appropriate. I feel like the shape is there, right? Like that is what we ordered. Alright, so here's our final part. I've got it in this box I'm going to fill up. Then wait till you see what the hell's going on out here. I don't know why it's doing that. Alright, this could really turn out to be one of those wah moments. I'm going to flip it over, take the cover off, see if we can get the plaster out, and then see what we're left with. Oh God. You can't even see it. Alright, that wasn't terrible. I just heated it up with the torch, and it revealed itself pretty nicely. I don't know if it's going to come out. This is basically like a bismuth antimony mix that melts at somewhere a little over 200 degrees. And it's used for stuff like this, and it's used for bending pipes. You can bend pipes with it. Fill up the pipe with this crap, and then you can bend it without kinking it. I don't know how I'm going to get this out. I didn't really think this part through. Okay, I chipped out our plaster and it worked. I have some holes I'll have to fill somehow. All of that caused me to lose this radius on this lip here, I think. So I'm going to measure this, but I don't think I'm going to be able to fold the sheet over that way. So initially what I thought was I would just clamp this part of it over to here and hold that way, and then just beat all this in and let it pull from here. And then, you know, maybe clamp it here towards the end or something. Now I don't really know what I'm going to do, because this here is supposed to follow this kind of rate. So what happened was when I first poured the metal, it started floating, and I pushed it down quick, but I had it kind of seated in there a certain way, and there was a radius involved here that this should melt at soldering iron temperatures. So all I did was I went around the edge, I filed a little bit, and then I just pushed the filings into some of the cavities. Everything's good. I'm doing fine. I'm definitely not losing my mind. This is a completely normal thing to do on a Saturday night. Totally the right way to do it. This was our piece we used for the buck form on the end of the impact hammer. So I'm just recycling it here. This is all like garbage material. But we're just gonna tack that on there like that. And it'll probably last long enough to do what we need to do. Alright, this is basically where we're at. I got this cleaned up as much as I can. I filled some spots. I couldn't put this final sweep in it for, where it hugs around 90 degrees from the wheel well. If I put my tin on and bolt through onto there, I'm going to commit this to like whatever this angle happens to be in relation to here, which isn't right. So that said, what I'm going to have to try to do is stuff all this down in there, somehow stretch this without anything secured, and I don't know if that's going to work. I mean, I'm just chasing my tail here, so I got to do something. I got my bit made up there. I'm just going to see if I can start working it in there and just see what happens. Well, it's going, but it's not going easy, I'll tell you. Whew. I don't know if all this is going to straighten out or not, but I mean, at least it kind of sort of looks like it's supposed to. Yeah, I'm doing good. Everything's going to be fine. Alright, well that totally didn't work. Fortunately, it took hardly any time at all.